You're listening to the Story By podcast. This show features short fiction with two things in common. First, I wanted to share them. Second, the rights to option or produce them for other media are available. My name is Lewayne L. White. I'll be the host and narrator. Welcome back to the Story By podcast. Thanks for stopping by. Happy holidays! I know there are a pile of them this month, so whichever ones you celebrate, I hope they're full of love, laughter, and fun. Before we get too far along into today's episode, I've got a little housekeeping to do, especially for those of you who might not stick around after the show. This remains a one-human operation, and the next couple weeks are busy for me. So, this is the last episode of the Story By podcast for 2017. I also have some paying AV gigs throughout January, so maybe we'll consider this the end of Season 1. I know I should have ended on a cliffhanger to make sure you come back for Season 2 on February 6th or so, but it's the holidays, so I opted to do a sort of children's story instead. I'll tell you more about why I chose it afterwards, if you want to hang around. Otherwise, grab some hot chocolate and curl up by the fire, or pile everyone into the car to look at lights, or whatever it is you do this time of year, and spend a little time with Achaidh and the Salsa Dragon. Salsa Dragon. Once there was a small village that sat at the base of a great, towering mountain. Way up high, at the tallest point of the mountain, there was a deep, dark cave. And in that deep, dark cave, there was a fierce and terrible fire-breathing dragon. At least that's what everyone said, even though no one had ever seen or heard the dragon, and no one had ever ventured up the mountain to check. But they all believed the dragon was up there, asleep on his great big piles of gold and jewels. Then one day, horrible roaring sounds echoed down from the mountaintop. Flames shot out into the sky from the mouth of the cave, and the villagers were afraid. Because they were afraid, they all gathered together to do something about it. But, as is often the case, no one wanted to be the person to do something about it. The old men who ran the village asked for someone brave to volunteer to go up the mountain to the cave and defeat the dragon. No one volunteered. The old men offered 100 gold libras. Still, no one volunteered. The old men offered 200 gold libras. And still, no one volunteered.
I will defeat the dragon for 1,000 gold libras.
Everyone turned to see who had spoken. It was a young village girl named Achaidh, standing with her arm raised. She repeated,
I will defeat the dragon for 1,000 gold libras.
For that was the amount she needed to pay for her home, food, and medicine for her mother. Achaigh's mother was the washerwoman, who cleaned everyone's clothes before she became too sick to work. Achaigh's father was a great soldier who was often away at war, like most of the men of the village. The old men of the village were not willing to part with such a sum of money, but they needed to look like they were protecting the village. And besides, none of them believed that a girl would defeat a dragon, so they agreed to pay her 1,000 gold libras. Achaidh returned home and told her mother of her mission. Her mother feared for Achaidh because it was such a long way up the mountain, and a dragon was waiting for her. Her mother insisted that Achaidh be well supplied. She made Achaidh take a rope, a jug of well water, and extra socks. She also insisted that Achaidh take all of their food. Achaidh agreed, but while her mother wasn't looking, Achaidh put back the food except for some dry, salty crackers and some jam. Then Achaidh set off up the mountain. As she climbed higher and higher, the dragon's roar grew louder, and jets of flame burst from the mouth of the cave. Achaidh was afraid, but she kept climbing. Halfway up the mountain, she took a break to eat some food and drink some water. Ada looked down at the village below and realized how very small it seemed. She looked up and saw the flames and heard the noise of the dragon. She knew she could return home. The path would be easier going down the mountain. Ada looked once more at the tiny village below, then packed her bag and resumed her climb. As the sun slowly faded beneath the horizon, Ada reached the mouth of the cave. She waited outside the cave for the roaring and the flames to stop. When they did, she crept into the cave. What she found surprised her very much. She had expected a fierce, monstrous creature, with spikes and horns on its head, covered in metallic armored scales, and spouting great fiery blasts, and surrounded by mountains of gold. What she found instead was a soft, pudgy creature not much bigger than herself. He wore little round glasses, and sat in a big poofy chair, and was surrounded by books, and papers, and scrolls. The giant, angry dragon was little more than a stout, soft bookworm. The dragon guzzled water from a great stone jug. When he finished drinking, he put down the jug and belched. Then he spotted Ada and jumped into the air with a shriek of surprise. When he landed, he looked at Ada, eyes wide, and spluttered, "What are you doing here? Don't you know there's a fierce, fire-breathing dragon in this cave?" Ada replied, "I don't think he looks very fierce," and poked the dragon in the tummy. The dragon belched and roared and flamed, but was polite enough to do so up a chimney. The dragon apologized for the flame, but he had recently visited his cousin, a Quetzalcoatl, which is a type of feathered serpent, and had brought home some of his cousin's homemade spicy salsa. The dragon really, really loved the salsa and couldn't stop eating it. But even though he was a fire-breathing dragon, it made his tummy burn, no matter how much water he drank. He knew the only thing that would stop making him spit flame would be to stop eating the salsa. But he really, really loved the salsa. Ada remembered that when she didn't feel well, her mother would give her crackers to settle her tummy. So Ada offered the last of her crackers to the dragon to see if he would feel better. The dragon ate the crackers, and after a time the burning in his tummy went away, and he stopped spitting flame. This made him very happy, because he really, really loved the salsa. Now he knew that if he ate the crackers after he ate the salsa, he wouldn't spit flame. Ada told the dragon that if he stopped spitting flame, he would stop scaring the villagers, and if he stopped scaring the villagers, Ada would have all the money she needed to care for her mother. To ensure that the dragon would always have crackers, Ada agreed to travel up to the cave once a month to bring him a new supply. In exchange, the dragon showed Ada a quick and easy trail up the mountain, and agreed to lend her any of his books to take home to read to her mother. "But wait," said the dragon. "How will you prove you defeated me?" Ada shrugged.
"In the stories, the knights bring back part of the dragon to prove they had beaten it."
The dragon smiled, and Ada realized he had a very large smile, full of more teeth than she thought she could count. The dragon wiggled one of the biggest, scariest-looking teeth loose and handed it to Ada.
"Here, I have plenty more, and I don't really use very many."
Ada tucked the tooth in her bag, along with a book about medicine, and another about a girl who went on many adventures. She thanked the dragon and headed back down the trail he had shown her. Soon she was back in the village and stood before the old men of the village to claim her 1,000 gold libers.
"How do we know that you have defeated the dragon?"
said the old men. Ada tossed the dragon's tooth to one of the old men, who caught it.
"That is a tooth pulled from the mouth of the dragon after I put out his flame forever,"
Ada said. Startled by that news, the old man dropped the tooth. Ada picked it up and returned it to her bag.
"So I will now claim my 1,000 gold libers," Ada said.
After much grumbling, the old men gave Ada a large bag of gold libers, and she returned home to share her story with her mother. I first told the story of the Salsa Dragon years ago, when our family went camping. In this case, we sat around the family room, ate a picnic dinner, and goofed around. When it got dark, we made some s'mores, played around with flashlight-generated shadow puppets, and made up stories. Mine was the story of the Salsa Dragon. I've told it a couple times since then, usually when one of the kids mentions, "That story about the dragon?" And I always told myself I should write that down. So, needing a story for the show, and knowing that Christmas was coming, I finally wrote it down and read it into a microphone. I don't know that our kids usually listen to this show, but I imagine they'll hear this episode, because we've got some holiday traveling to do, and I'll have a captive audience. With that in mind, Merry Christmas, Dagan, Ace, and E. Thanks for inspiring so many stories, for listening to them, and giving me reasons to keep telling them. And happy birthday to Becky, who is responsible for our trio, and who has always reviewed my stories when I ask, even when she has more important things to do. And, while I'm doling out good wishes, thanks so much to you, dear listener, for stopping by. I really appreciate it. Happy holidays. We'll see you next year for Season 2 of the Story By podcast.